Welcome to the next step in our path of coming back from fear, where we look at how we can use our superpowers with the emotion of grief. This feeling is tied closely to our perception of loss in our lives. Whether we lose someone by death or divorce or breakup or by distance, we might feel incomplete on the other end of the experience. We could also feel grief at the loss of a situation or a job, though that is less common, unless you feel married to your job, or maybe you owned your own business and it felt like an entity that was part of you. The first time I can recall this feeling of grief was when I was 8 years old. It was the first time we moved away from Colorado to Nevada. And back in those days, we didn't have social media or email or free long distance. So if you wanted to keep in touch with your friends, you would actually have to mail a letter through the post office. I never received any replies to my letters. And of course, looking back now, it's a very high expectation for an 8-year-old to maintain correspondence that way. But nevertheless, I felt a loss of friendship. We moved again after a year to California, and then after another year back to Colorado Springs, and then after 6 months to Denver, and after 3 years to San Antonio, Texas. Each time I faced losing all my friends. But the feeling of grief became less and less each time. When I met people who had been friends since they were in kindergarten, I was a bit jealous and resentful of the relationship they had. I grieved what could have been with my childhood friends. I focused on what I had lost. Pets become part of the family, and sometimes we have closer relationships with them because they know how to listen and are filled with unconditional love for us. Well, mostly. Dogs for sure. Cats, I think, love us unconditionally, but might get a bit irritated at our lack of worship of them. So maybe they are very forgiving too. And that's another great characteristic that attracts us. But since most animals don't live the lifespan of a human, we experience grief when family pets die. They say that all the animals that we have bonds with wait for us on the other side. And if that is true, I'm going to spend time at a zoo on the other side when I get there. All the pets that I've had. I remember finding one of my favorite cats dying on the side of our house. It had either been bit by something or been hit by a car and crawled there because it was breathing its last breath when I found her. And she was such a loving cat. My heart broke when I buried her in our backyard. Then, shortly thereafter, one of her sons was hit by a car in front of our house. And I had to scoop up his body off the street with a shovel and put it into a trash bag. And I buried him next to his mom. And of course, whenever we moved, most of the time we got rid of our four-legged pets. And I'm not sure what happened to some of them. But each time I was hit with that grieving feeling of loss. Somehow I learned to move through my grief during my childhood. I think our minds do whatever's necessary to survive and not lose it when we're first hit with those types of experiences. But now we have the knowledge of our superpowers to apply to grief so that we can flow through those emotions back into peace. So let's take a look at them. The power to laugh. There is a scene from the movie Steel Magnolias that always comes to my mind when facing the death or parting of a loved one. Julia Roberts' character of the daughter had died, and Sally Field's character of her mother was devastated and crying. Well, at one point she gets angry and she mentions she wants to hit something so it can feel the hurt that she's feeling. And Olympia Dukakis pushes Shirley MacLaine towards her and says, "Here, hit Weezer." And it interrupts the emotional roller coaster that they are on and changes the entire mood of everyone like in an instant to where they burst out laughing. And that is when the healing begins. We are taught to look at the loss and all the fear of what will result because of the situation. But we can equally choose to think about the good things that happened, all the amazing memories and experiences that we encountered with the individual, whether a human or an animal. When a friend, a loved one, or an acquaintance has passed away, one of the most comforting things that I experienced was to fill our hearts with the funny memories of that person. I know that when I die, this is what I would ask of anyone who knows me. Don't miss me. Well, you can miss me for a day. But remember the humor and laughter I brought into a moment. Because chances are, I'm going to be around you, haunting you the rest of your life anyway, so you won't have to miss me. The power of thank you. I reiterate what I just mentioned, that the power of thank you can be such a healing gift when we apply it to remembering the individual and are grateful for the time they were with us. Especially when there are times when someone had a terminal disease, conquered it for a year or 2 or 3, and then ended up passing later. We had what they called borrowed time with them, and some don't get that. So much to be grateful for. We tend to want things that others have had because we think we were supposed to. It was interesting that those who lived in the same city, with the same friends, the same school, the same everything, would tell me that they were envious of me to have been on such an adventure, living in so many states and getting to know so many people. When we're looking outward at what everyone else is doing, we can lose sight of everything we have. The power of thank you helps us focus back into what we do have, and it allows us to see how blessed we truly are right now. Which brings us into the power of now. So if we live in what could have been, we miss out on what is. Do I really know if all those things I thought were supposed to be were really meant to happen to me? One clear indication to know if something was supposed to happen to us is if it happened. Because if it didn't happen, well, there's your answer. If it was meant to be, then it would have happened. So, I must have wanted to experience what I did in order to learn and feel and experience what I have. This moment is full of everything we asked for before we came here. We are in need of nothing else. We are not less than we should be. We are everything we need to be right here, right now, in this moment. Deep breaths. Come back to now. the power of no. When life comes at us and gets in our face, telling us that we should fall to the ground in pain and suffering and agony, telling us that we are less, and tells us stories of how we are not going to make it without that person or situation, that things will never be the same, that maybe we should just end our lives to avoid the ugly outcomes. When all that happens, we have a choice to make. We can say yes to those feelings and dive into them, swim in them, and maybe even die in them. Or we can use our power of no. We can have that bravery and courage swell up within us and stand up for ourselves. Make our own decisions on how we want to respond to the situation. We can laugh. We can focus on the wonderful things. We can come back to this moment and not worry about the future right now. I love movies because there are some great visuals that give us grounding in this physical realm. In the first movie of The Matrix, there's a scene where Neo accepts that he is powerful. And as some agents fire guns at him, he holds up his hand and simply says, "No." The bullets stop in midair. He looks at them, and then they drop to the floor. And that is how I try to see myself whenever I say no to a thought that is telling me about how less I am or how I should act. I get to be the one in my life, and you get to be the one in your life. You have that power. The power to question. When we come to a calmer place, then we can question the beliefs behind all the emotions of fear that we experienced. When I moved away and my friends didn't respond, I believed it meant that I wasn't worth anything or worth enough for their time and postage. I thought our friendship was a sham and that I had never really mattered to them. I think some of that comes into our minds when someone passes away or kills themselves, because we were using their opinions of us to define our worth, or we felt safe with the conditions in which we lived with them. Now that they are not in our lives, we're unsure of how our lives will turn out. Our fear ego will bring all sorts of pictures and stories into our minds to show us how awful our future is going to be and the avalanche of bad events that will follow this one. I find solace in the knowledge that this life is just one huge movie, and everyone has their character that they will play in order for the experience to be what it is. When someone leaves our lives, we might think they don't communicate with us anymore. But one day, we discover a spam folder on our email. We find all the emails that they have been sending us every day since we parted each other, and we are the ones that haven't responded to them. The soul behind anyone never dies. We are eternal beings, and yes, that does include animals. The characters we play have a point in the production where we are killed off for the sake of the storyline. But the real us just goes out to sit in the audience to enjoy the show. We even get to walk unseen among the individuals that are still in the play, giving them hints and tips about their journey. But when we, who are still here, are so focused on the loud voices of fear, we find it difficult to hear the whispers of love. but they are there. If we can take time to learn how to come back from our fears, we can learn to turn down the volume of fear and turn up the volume of love. And that is my intention with these podcasts, and really everything I do. Coming back from fear and reconnecting with the love inside us. I'm attempting to organize a clear path on how we can get there. And if you'd like, check it out, the 4 steps on my website at bradazen.com. And let me know what you think. It's free. Just let me know what you think there. And I end this podcast sharing a Facebook post called Behold. It goes like this. We hold within our hands our very own hearts. No one can take it from us, and we cannot give it away. We can let the love that flows from it be dedicated to a person or a purpose, but we do not give away our heart. Our heart cannot be broken. It can feel the fear that it's not lovable or acceptable. That can make us react with a tighter grip on our heart, which causes our heart pain, but it cannot be broken by another individual. We control the love that comes into our hearts, and we control the love that flows out of our hearts. When we realize this, we can stop being victims of outward circumstances and become knights of love, unafraid of scary shadows and other people's actions. With love in our hearts for ourselves and others, we focus on love, knowing that whatever is not of love is of the fear of losing love, which is a lie. Love is ours. Be love. Hold love in our hearts. Behold. Our adventure is always love. Next episode, we will take a look at the emotion of panic. Until then, revisit a memory where you felt grief. Don't dive deep into the emotion. Just stick your big toe in it. Breathe deep as you look at what you feel the situation meant to you. How were you using your relationship with that person or animal to define you? See that you survived and that you really are okay right here, right now. Check your spam folder. They have been writing to you every day since they left you. See what unconditionally loving words they have left for you. And remember, you never have to do anything you don't want to do.